Hey there, Braves. So, this week we're working on testing the soil in our grow zone. Right now you're doing the preliminary measurements. As time goes on, my other students, as we start growing in this area, we're going to start depleting the soil of different nutrients, and we're going to have to keep testing this out. Right now, you're doing the initial so that we kind of know what it is that we're starting our market garden with. So one of the first things that every single gardener out there can do very cheaply, all it requires is a little bit of dish detergent and a mason jar, is do a soil suspension test. And a soil suspension test really requires, as I just said, a mason jar, some dirt and water. If you have some liquid detergent, like what you would put in a dishwasher, that works great to help kind of have things settle a little more easily. Here's what you're going to do. You should already at your desk have a soil sample with a number on it. All you're going to do is make sure, number one, that your jar is less than half full. You probably want it about a quarter to a third full. That's important because you need a large column of water on top to give the different minerals time to settle out. If there's not enough water, a bunch of stuff will immediately settle out because it'll be a saturated solution and you won't get the correct measurements later on. So right now, looking at number 13, this probably has too much. All I'm going to do is take number 13, I'm going to put it in the number 13 soil bin. For most of you, it's a little purple bin. I'm going to pour out the excess in there. Now I've got a little bucket here, so that's what I'm doing now. You can kind of see a little better, but now I've got about a third in there. Once I have that, I am then going to add tap water, not distilled water, tap water. And I'm going to fill it all the way up to the line that has been marked in marker on your jar. Once you fill it up, you simply seal the top, add your detergent in. Seal the top, shake it up until everything gets completely dissolved. The longer you shake, the better. It's really going to help dissolve everything. And then you're just going to set it down on your desk and do not disturb it. Don't pick it up and look at it, swirl it around, because what you need is for all of the individual grains to settle out of that water. Now, I did this one this morning, and you can see that I still have in this water, it's not clear yet. What is still floating in the water is clay minerals. Clay is the smallest, finest grain minerals that you'll have in your soil. You can already see, though, from here to here is a layer of silt. By the end of class, you should be able to measure your silt level, and you should be able to measure your sand level, which is this stuff down here. Now, you'll have to come back on Friday, a full 24 plus hours later, to then get the clay measurement and organic content measurement as well. We may have some hard time with the organic content, but we'll see. The measurements that you're going to be taking are very simple. You're going to measure the total height. Once this has all been settled down, 24 hours later, you're going to measure the total height of the soil sample in here, and you're going to write that down. That number is what you're dividing all of the other numbers by. Then, step 2, you should be able to do this before you leave the first day, is to measure out how much sand has settled. Well, when I measure it here, I have about 1 inch of sand. And my total measurement is 1.5 inches for the whole thing. So I would take my 1 inch, divide it by 1.5 inches, and that's how I would get my percent of sand in the soil. Then I would measure my silt layer, which you should have about enough time to do that before you leave the first day. My silt layer here is about 1/2 inch. So I would take 1/2 inch divided by 1.5 inches times 100 to get my percentage. It's pretty simple. Then what you're going to do at the end of this day, today, is take this, go set it on the counter where it's undisturbed, and allow it to continue settling. When it's finally done, you'll notice this is one that's been done for a year. You can actually see through it, and you should have organic material and clay eventually settling there. Okay, very simple. Once you have these measurements down, make sure you insert them in the soil map as well as the shared Google Sheet that we're keeping track of this stuff in. Okay, fun. That's test number 1. Test number 2, 3, 4, and 5 are to test the pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium content. That is a longer process. So every single person in the room, I shouldn't say every single person, every single group should have an extraction tube. This is a large Falcon tube or test tube with a lid. It says extraction on it, and it actually has the soil and water measurements marked on here to make it super simple. On top of that, you should have 4 smaller Falcon tubes. Call them Falcon tubes. It's a company that made them, and they're Falcon tubes. They're basically plastic test tubes, though. And you should have a nitrogen, a potassium, a phosphorus, and a pH test tube here for you. On top of that, everybody should have a test tube holder of some sort. This is going to make your life a lot easier so you can set stuff down, right? Okay, now, other things you should have. This is a micropipette. Notice that this measures in milliliters, and it measures from the bottom, so the smaller numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's so you know how much you took up. And then when you turn it this way, you'll notice it counts down. That's so you know how much you just put in there. Now, really the only measurement that matters is the small number, because you're going to suck it all the way up to 9.5 milliliters, and then you're going to dump that in these tubes for the correct ones. So just keep that in mind. Okay, the micropipette, other things I want to mention about it. While these look cheap, they're not cheap. These are kind of expensive, and these are also my property, like not the schools, but stuff that I got personally that I'm letting you use. So things not to do is rotate this all the way up and suck stuff up into here, because then the suction vacuum part of this stops working and then I have to throw it away. So never go past the 0 line on this for any reason. Otherwise, whenever I want to go and say get some water or solution or whatever, notice I have this depressed all the way down. I use this right here, and this is how it sucks stuff up into the tube. So for instance, if I want to get 10 milliliters, I just stick this in here. I continue to raise my thumb slowly until I get to 10. And if I overshoot, I can go the other way and it pushes it back in. So if I want exactly 9.5 milliliters of water, there you go. It makes it really easy to get the exact amount that you need for whatever you're doing. Now, to dump it out, I can either push the wheel the other way, or I can push this white lever and it releases the vacuum, air fills the chamber and pushes the solution out. So that's how you use a micropipette. Okay, well, you'll need to know that here in just a second. Other things that you're going to need are distilled water. I'm going to have an empty beaker for you to just go on ahead and pour some distilled water into your beaker. You only need about 100 milliliters and really nothing more than 100 milliliters. So don't waste it. It's getting expensive. It's like $1.65 for a gallon of distilled water. It used to be like 98 cents. So anyways, don't use all my distilled water because I don't want to go buy more. All right, now, next, you will, per test, come up and grab the tablets that you need. The tablets that you need are Flock X, Nitrate 1 and 2, Phosphorus, and Potassium. These little tablets come in sheets that have been sealed in aluminum. And some of them are marked, but it's going to get really confusing if I just give you all of the tablets together. You might accidentally, use the wrong one for the wrong test. So what I'm asking you to do is only come up and grab the tablets that you need for the current one that you're doing, go sit down, do that test, then come back up and grab the next one. That way you don't get these mixed up, because I only have enough of these to do this lab for my 3 classes, okay? I don't have a lot of extras, so we can't be wasting and we can't be mixing them up. Okay, all that being said, let's talk about how to make your extraction. So, we're not just gonna go in here and start mixing dirt with chemicals, because you're not gonna get the result that you want. what we're going to do is create an extraction. And if you can see it on the camera, you notice that in this tube, there's soil down here, but right here is a clear liquid. This clear liquid is the extraction that we're making. So we kind of have to follow the instructions to the T so that we get the correct mixture of nutrients. Basically what's happening is we're going to use this chemical called Flock X, and this Flock X is going to take the nitrate, the potassium, and the phosphorus that's in the soil, and it's going to dissolve it into this clear solution so we can get access to it and test it with our chemicals. So it's actually pulling out those minerals that we are testing for out of the dirt. So how do we do this? Well, very simply, I need to fill my Falcon tube, my big one, the one that says extraction on it, up to 10 milliliters with soil, and then all the way up to the 30 milliliter line with distilled water. And that's what I have in this right here. So I'm going to go on ahead and do that really quick. I got up to my 10 milliliter line. And other thing to mention, you want to make sure that the soil you're putting in here has been ground up. Basically take your fingers and get it really nice and finely grated so that you don't have big chunks in here, because that's going to make it harder to do the thing. Okay, next, you're going to take your micropipette, make sure it's pushed all the way down like that, using the wheel, not the top. And you're going to go in here and collect, you need a total of 30 milliliters of distilled water. You're just going to fill this up to that line. So it might take 2 or 3 of these to fill it up. There's one. Now keep in mind, it's going to be more than just 20 milliliters of water here, because the water is going to go in here and fill in the pore spaces in between the individual grains of dirt. So you're actually going to use more than 20 milliliters of water in here. That's why you're filling up to the 30 milliliter line. All right. If you get a little over, that's not the end of the world, but whatever you do, don't go by much further than the 35 milliliter mark, because these chemicals are a certain amount per a given amount of solution it's supposed to create. You don't want to water down the chemical too much, essentially. Okay? So I'm going to set this right here in my test tube holder while I get a hold of my Flock X. And my Flock X, I got 2 boxes of it. You need 2 of them, not just 1. So I'm going to tear off these little Flock X tablets. And these are tiny tablets. So when you're popping these open, be careful, because they're very small, and on our epoxy floor it's going to be very easy to lose. So there's one tablet, and here is the second tablet that I am adding in here. Once I have my 2 tablets in, I'll come show the camera. You can see my 2 tablets are in here. One of them broke in half. That's why it looks like there's 3. And what I'm going to do, just to show you, there's my water line. There was my soil line down there somewhere. Okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to mix this up until those 2 white tablets completely disappear. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to sit there and sing songs in my head and think about all the wonderful things that I get to do being a human in the 21st century. This might take about 2 minutes to get them completely dissolved, by the way. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. So you're going to shake this until you can't see those white tablets anymore. And that might get hard because this is going to start to look like chocolate milk. So you're just going to kind of have to go for about 2 minutes. At the end of the 2 minutes, all you're going to do with the extraction is set it down in your test tube holder, right there, and wait for this to separate. Meanwhile, while you're waiting for this to separate, because you need the solution for your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, you're going to go ahead and move on to the pH test. The pH test doesn't use the solution that you're extracting here. Instead, what this uses is a little bit of soil, some distilled water, and some pH tablets. So, first things first, what I need to do is get just a little bit of soil in here. I only want to fill it up to this first elbow where it says 1 milliliter. So that's what I'm going to do. And again, just like with your extraction, you want to make sure that the dirt that you put in here from your sample is really finely graded stuff. It makes it easier for the test, and it helps things get dissolved in it. Okay, next, you're going to fill this with distilled water up to 9.5 milliliters. Don't go much higher than that because you'll dilute the test. So I'm going to go on ahead and do that. Now again, you're going to be filling in pore space down here, so it might take a little bit more than 9.5, which is why you're going to go to that 9.5 line. So I'll go ahead and add that in there now. Voila, just like that. I'm going to set this down, and I am going to grab my pH tablet. And I only need one pH tablet, so nothing too crazy. These are from 1996. The chemicals are still viable because they've been sealed in this foil and they've never been opened. However, they are starting to get very brittle. So this tablet, just for me opening it, completely broke down into a dust. So, you might have to be careful and just dump it in from the foil. Okay, that's now in here. I'm going to shake this up very vigorously, at least 10 times. Get it completely mixed up. And then, just like with the extraction, I'm going to set this down in my test tube holder. It's going to separate out, and you can actually already see it's starting to change colors and it's starting to turn green. And the way that pH indicators and all of these indicators work is through a color gradient. So on the back of the box, what I have is a color chart. And I have this color chart. I took a photo of it and I have it on your lab, so you can use your lab instead of the box. But all I do is I hold it up to the color chart, and you can see I got an instant result. Basically, it's showing me that my pH is at 7, or it's a neutral soil. So this neutral soil is exactly what we want. Typically, you don't want a basic soil. Slightly acidic soil is okay. I think 6.5 to 7 is like kind of what you want. There are some acid-loving vegetables out there, but typically you're going for neutral, and it seems like that's what we have here. So this one was pretty quick. Let's go on ahead and move to the other tests. So by this time, you can see my extraction has basically been completed. Here is the liquid that we are going to be using, and you can see it's separated out from the soil there. So now we're going to use that clear liquid to do our tests. So first things first, I'm going to pop the top off of this so I can have access to it. I need 9.5 milliliters of the extraction for my nitrogen test. This one requires 2 different types of tablets, nitrate 1 and nitrate 2. And you have to do them in the correct order, and you have to make sure each time the tablet dissolves completely before adding in the next one. So keep that in mind. I'm going to come over to my extraction. I'm going to be very careful not to stick this down into the soil because I don't want mud and soil in here. It'll mess with my results. Also, too, I don't want to get dirt in here because it's going to clog up my pipette. I also don't want to put it down in there because it's going to remix all the soil back up in my solution, and I'm going to have to wait for it to all percolate back out. So I'm going to stick this in here. I'm going to get 9.5 milliliters. Oop, I had an air bubble. That was 8.5. That was a big air bubble. Get a little bit more. There. Okay, 9.5 of my solution. I add that into my tube. Boom. Done. If you're a little less or a little more, it's okay. Don't go too much less, don't go too much more. It's important. Okay. Again, these are all about the amount of something in a solution. If you add more water, you're taking it, you're diluting it. So there's going to be less per milliliter of water. So making sure you have the correct amount of solution is very important. Okay, gonna set that down. Now what I need is my nitrate number 1. So I'm gonna grab that right here. And I'm gonna drop this tablet right in. Voila. Put the top on and shake it around until it disappears. I should say dissolve. Nothing really truly disappears. Oh, that one happened very quickly. All right, so that's already just dissolved, not disappeared. So now once that's dissolved, I'll go over and grab my nitrate number 2. Cap back on and shake it till it dissolves again. Okay, this is completely dissolved. I'm now done with my nitrogen test. I'm gonna set it down in my test tube and I'm gonna leave it. It's gonna take some time for those chemicals to go on ahead and do their thing. While we're waiting for them to do their thing, we're gonna move on to our phosphorus test. Now our phosphorus test is a little bit different. What you're gonna need for the phosphorus test is an eyedropper. And the reason I need you to use an eyedropper is because you're actually measuring by the number of drops, and it's a little bit harder to do that with a micropipette. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the cap off of here, and then I'm gonna go to my extraction solution. I'm gonna suck some up in my little eyedropper, and I'm gonna count the drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. And as I look at this, at the measurement, that's almost exactly 2 milliliters. So if you couldn't find one of these, just add 2 milliliters to your Falcon tube and call it good. Now, next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my micropipette and I'm going to fill this up to 9.5 milliliters of distilled water. So I'm adding extra distilled water to complete this. So I'll do that now, adding distilled water up to the 9.5 milliliter level in the tube. Voila, just like that. And now I am ready to add my phosphorus tab. So that is this one. And just like the other tests, I'm going to mix this up until that little tablet disappears. That one is done. I'm going to set that down in my test tube holder. And now I'm going to move on to the final one, which is potassium. So again, give these some time, let the chemicals do their stuff. Potassium is going to be very similar to the nitrate. The only difference is there's 1 tab instead of 2 to use. So what do I mean by it's very similar? Well, I need 9.5 of my extraction. So I'm going to get 9.5 milliliters of my extraction, being very careful not to suck up voila. Set that down. Grab my potassium tablets. And it's only 1 potassium tablet. Drop that in there. Whoop. Cap it. And shake this one just like you did the others. All right, that's completely dissolved, so I set that down on my test tube. And I'm gonna wait 5 minutes for all of these to kind of do their thing. At the end of 5 minutes, I should start to see some coloration occurring in each of these test tubes. For some reason, my nitrogen doesn't seem like it's kicking on. But lucky for y'all, because I know you don't want to sit here for 5 minutes waiting for the results, I went on ahead and did this ahead of time on another set. So I'm going to show you what those colors look like. As those are doing their color changing, here you can see this was my pH from before, and again, that is a 7.0. You can see that my nitrogen level is medium to high on this scale. So, you know, I might put MH there, or I might put H if I think that is high. I'd probably call it high nitrogen. For my potassium, it's all about how blue it is, and as I look at this, I'd say it's medium to low on the phosphorus here. And finally, potassium, this one should be a little darker. In fact, yesterday when I did this test, it was darker. It was in the medium to high range. You can see, I shouldn't say medium to high range. Notice how light colored this is, and high is actually at the lighter color. So yesterday when I did it, it was kind of in between here, but now today it's kind of moved into the high. So it's probably medium to medium high in potassium most likely. What's going to happen is that my ones that you just saw me do are going to start to change color. You can already see that my phosphorus is starting to get kind of bluish there. You can see this one's starting to kind of change color as well. So, you know, it might take a little bit for your chemical test to do their thing and react, but this is how you do your chemical testing. Now, once you have your results from the chemical testing, which you will, no matter what, by the end of the hour, have all of this done, you're going to enter your results in on the Google Sheet, the shared spreadsheet, and you're going to enter them in on the site map, the soil map. You're going to add a text box into the soil map, drop in the numbers for your chemical testing as well as your soil column testing. And that way we have both a data table as well as a nice visual map so we can visualize and plan out the garden for this spring. So this is how you do your chem testing for your soil. I hope this helped. Feel free to go ahead and rewind this or never watch it again, whatever you need. So yeah, have fun.